put the business hat on. Are you not extraordinarily thankful to the city of Las Vegas and the greater Las Vegas area for giving you $300 million, that $380 million, that you're not gonna go there? That's not where you're going.
No, I mean, if they're offering that, you literally dress up as Elvis and you're just like, Viva Las Vegas. Viva Las Vegas. I mean, if I was the owner, that's what I'd do.
Yeah, listen, you have to. At the end of the day, it's a numbers game, right? It's always a numbers game. And if they're going to give you $400 million to build your stadium, now your stadium is, what is that? 400 into 1.2 is 30%. You're cutting your cost by 30%, 33.33333%. I don't understand how you just there's no justification now. Sorry, I would just go if I was John Fisher. I'd go on my X account or my Instagram or TikTok and say, guys, I don't know what you want me to do. It's going to cost me $800 million in Las Vegas. It's going to cost me $1.2 billion in Oakland. I don't know. Do you guys have $400 million going to give me? As I don't know what you want from me. I have to take this deal. It doesn't make sense for me not to. So, and again, maybe I'm missing things here. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. The moment I saw that, I was like, I better go see some other stuff here, other points as to why I would stay in Oakland. Because from a strictly business perspective, makes no sense to me to stay in Oakland if Las Vegas is going to give me $380 million to build a stadium. It just flat out now, if the stadium in Oakland was going to cost only $800 million, but real estate for whatever reason was more in Las Vegas, so it was 1.2 there, then we start having an argument. But I can't imagine real estate in Oakland's cheap. I mean, especially it seemed like everything I've seen over the last few years, San Francisco is the highest real estate market in the country. I think that's dropping now because seemingly it's getting some pretty bad publicity about is it being safe and so on and so forth. But it's expensive to live out there. It's not a cheap place to live. So again, it doesn't make sense to me that the moment that you get this, you don't have an argument anymore, Oakland, as to why you're keeping. Besides that, you love your team, you're a passionate fan base, so on and so forth. But from an outsider's perspective, and it is just an outsider's, and we're going to get into it. I did reach out to a fan. I seemed to be somewhat of a super fan of the Oakland Athletics on X. It's kind of get his perspective, which I will give you. But it doesn't make sense to me. There's no counter argument at this point. In at least from my perspective from Oakland to keep the Athletics. And honestly, and I get into this later, and I will jump around in my notes, but I'm not going to let the political powers, and again, I don't know a ton. It's tough to, and also, as much as I love the Sorry We're Closed podcast, I don't like to do a ton of political jargon and research to try to figure out what's going on there. But I put in my notes a little bit later in on my little sheet here that I'm not going to let leadership off the hook. Politics always play a role, whether you have a good relationship, whether you don't have a good relationship, whether you think the city of Oakland leadership thinks that this is a bad political play. They have an election coming up or something, and they want to win it, and this is not the way to win it. All of that stuff could play a role. So there's always going to be more behind the scenes, and I'm not going to sit here and say the whole problem is John Fisher, because it likely is not. Is he completely innocent? No, but it's likely not his fault completely. So I'm going to give you a few more things here, and this is the one caveat that I want to make mention here when it comes to this project. Major League Baseball did get involved a bit. And one, they let him off the hook for about $300 million by not charging him a relocation fee. Seems like a pretty aggressive relocation fee, but hey, whatever. So one thing they're very cognizant of, and they do not want to happen, I'm not sure why, but they don't want this to happen, is they don't want John Fisher to get approvals and then sell the team. Now, this is big in the real estate world. It's big, like, say you own a building in New York City, and it's 4 stories, but you got approvals to build 60 stories. Obviously, that piece of land is now way more valuable for developers specifically, and yourself as an owner. But let's say now the billion's valued at $100 million, you might go out and sell it with approvals for $40 million because you just don't feel like doing the you're not a developer, you don't want to go through the hassle, like all that stuff. Maybe you're later in life, you're like, I'm going to take my $40 million golden parachute here and I'm going to leave. And your big developer will come in and buy that and go make however much money on the project, and maybe it costs them $30 million to build, and so on and so forth. So that's similar to here. For some reason, Major League Baseball does not want John Fisher to get these approvals and sell off. So there is a little bit of incentive here to keep the team. The way they did it is if he decides to sell the team now prior to 2028, they can't stop that, free country, right? But he'll be charged 20% tax on the purchase price. If he sells in 2029, he'll be taxed 10%. From 2030 to 2033, it will be decreased each year by a certain amount. I did not get a number. And in 2034 is when he can sell the team without penalty by Major League Baseball. So again, I don't know why. I don't know why they don't want him to get approvals and sell the team, but they don't want.
I don't know. I don't know if it's. I don't know if I agree with they don't want him to. I mean, they just want to. If they're helping facilitate this whole thing, they just want to wet the beak. It's like, well, fine. You want to sell it, fine. Just like we're going to wet the beak.
Yeah, and that could be it. Maybe they're like, listen, we know what you're up to. We know you want to sell with approvals, and that's fine. But we're going to get a piece of the action.
Did you? I don't know if you saw the quote that I found. This was just my research. This isn't my quote, but this was from an article. It was the entire ballpark project is expected to cost $1.5 billion, which means Fisher, whose leading accomplishment in his life is being born into an immense wealth. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, man. They, again, I put in my notes as well that they obviously hate this owner, but I didn't know it was this much. Let's see. Go back to my Twitter here.
When you had the Raiders Mark Davis thing, that was your research.
Yes. Oh yeah. I'll get into that in a little bit. But I put on Twitter last night just to try to get just a little bit of Oakland fans trying to come back at me. Not come back at me, but I did get a little aggressive in my post. I said, I'm doing some research for next week's Sorry We're Closed. I knew the owner of the A's. It was hated, but geez, I didn't know it was this bad. With that being said, and this is why I said that I stood by this, because I did want to get people's juices flowing, hopefully getting into some Oakland Athletics fans' hands and seeing what they came back at me with. But I said it does seem from a financial standpoint a smart move to leave Oakland. Would love to hear some counters to that for the show tomorrow, ... Just trying to get some people's opinions. One guy came back.
Everybody was like, leave.
Yeah, it really was. Like this one guy was a Red Sox fan, just said, just wrote a paper about this situation in college. If the owner continues to stay mute and not spend, which arguably implies that he doesn't care, fans can only stick around for so long before losing meaning. If he doesn't spend in Vegas, the same will happen and feel for Oakland. Now, I want to stop on that one for the time being and go back to my notes, because what's going on here, and I had someone reach out to me on X about comparing this with the Tampa team. The Tampa Bay Rays, who have put together a really good, maybe 5 years. I don't remember when they started becoming very good. Obviously, they were solid with Evan Longoria back in the day, but that's a team that has shown promise and still has a really tough time drawing fans. Now, I've heard some rumors that it's because they're in St. Petersburg and not actually in Tampa. I've heard the stadium sucks, which it does. I did play there once. I've heard some things about why that is, but they struggle. They have a good team, and they struggle to bring fans. And listen, St. Petersburg is, but I've been around to other teams. The Yankees being in the Bronx, that's kind of out of the way for a lot of the fans. Like obviously they have diehards in the Bronx, but it's out of the way for people like me, and I'm still pretty close by. A lot of teams are not in the heart of things, and they still draw well, especially when they've been as competitive as the Tampa Bay Rays have been. And I had someone on X reach out to me about comparing and contrasting the two teams and in those deals. Now, it does seem as though that the Tampa Bay team or the Tampa Bay ownership has a much better relationship with the St. Petersburg leadership and their political. It doesn't seem to be a tense situation. I saw a lot of positive press surrounding when Tampa was going to market with their club. A lot of people wanted them. St. Petersburg wanted to keep them, and I mean, Tampa was even pitched a $1.7 billion stadium in Orlando by the Magic owner to come over there. They were funding that, by the way, partially at least, by $975 million in tourist tax dollars. And obviously Tampa turned that down to stay in St. Petersburg. But there didn't seem to be a lot of negative press around Tampa and their ownership. And exactly at least not the negative press you're seeing right now when it comes to the Athletics and John Fisher. It seems like it was a good relationship, but they struggled to get a good attendance. So what we're seeing is that putting together a good product doesn't always mean you're going to get attendance. And we saw that also in my mentions here on X. We had someone replied, all the people bitching about it don't want to point out that no one went to A's games when they were good either. It's been that way for 50 years. And that's actually a friend of mine who responded that way. But then you had someone else come back and say, hey, listen, staying in Oakland with a great new ballpark and an owner who wants to win would absolutely be successful. The Oakland A's have had some great teams and were well supported. Fisher and Las Vegas is a match about to set fire to a franchise. So, listen, you have some people pushing back and saying that, but listen, Oakland, the proof is in the pudding. The Raiders are seemingly having much more success from an attendance standpoint out in Vegas. Their stadium is really cool. Just was out there myself, and then it does seem like the move to Vegas is kind of what teams are considering.
Well,